So doing a carved top requires a little bit more work and planning. It's a little bit harder to do in the sense that you've got to set your neck back so that your bridge fits right. If you just do a flat and you do a carved top down, it's much harder. You don't get the right string breakage angle from when you're playing. It's a little bit harder to play. So what they like to do is set the neck back, and then you've got some clearance to actually improve the playability of the guitar. So what I'm first going to do here is actually round a bead around the top. That way I've got a hard stop all around the top of the guitar body, and in doing this it allows me to really get a clean carve on the top, and I know exactly where to stop. So as I'm using my planes and files and grinder, I really know where to stop when I'm doing this. Alright, so to do the right carve on a Tele, there isn't like a template that's out there like a Les Paul where you can sort of gauge. I'm going to do this by hand. I've got a roto grinder with a 36 grit sanding wheel, and what I need to do is sort of make this easier on myself. So what I did is I took a pencil, I started to begin to trace out what I think is the right outline, and then I've got a marker. What I'm going to do is sort of hard mark this so I can really see what I'm going to do. And since I'm going to be doing this by hand, a lot of this is just going to be feel and look. And I'll use some feeler gauges as I get going. But these are sort of the basic contours that I'm going to be looking to carve. Now I'll have my neck pocket. My different steps here. What I'll do is I'll take a drill bit and start drilling some of the relief. That way I don't have as much to carve. So we'll just sort of step up. I think maybe a 1/16 going up will help really set this carve up correctly. So we'll move over to the drill press now. So next up here, when I actually carve the top, what I've got is a 3/8 drill bit, not a brad point bit, but just a regular drill bit. And what I've done is I've got the contours here, and what I'm going to do is drill out around and slowly back this up, lower it, so I can get half of a curve to some degree. So I'll turn this on, drill, 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 and go around this first line, and then come back, drop this a little bit, go to the second line. That way, when I'm doing the drilling here, deepest, second deepest, third deepest, fourth deepest, fifth deepest, sixth deepest, if I back off a 1/16 each time, I get a much easier carve, and I've got some depth reference points. So this is how Bob Bendato suggests you actually carve an arch top, and I've adapted this for when I'm carving by hand. Make sure if you got a drill press that you're tightening this up so it's not moving, and that your drill bit is extra tight. You don't want anything slipping, because if you've only got a 1/16 to play with, the worst thing to do is get to here and it's loose and you push down and you go too deep, and then you pretty much just have ruined your top. So we'll get the vacuum cleaner going here and we'll start the drilling. So when I'm drilling these holes, I'm not actually trying to go right on the line. I'm trying to go on the inside of the line. That way I know exactly where I'm drilling. So now I've got my first run of holes drilled. What I'm going to do is loosen this up. We're going to drop this just a bit. So the way I do that is I push this all the way down. Then we're going to just lower it. That looks to be about a 1/16. Tighten this back up. And now we'll follow the inside line. For the third step, same process as before. Loosen it up. Drop my bit, make sure I'm going the right way. Loosen it up. Tighten it up. And we'll keep going. I'm taking my time here and going slow. One, I don't want to make a huge mess in my shop. Two, I want to make sure that the bit doesn't jump around and loosen up. So going slow is really part of the process. So when you're doing the carve top, you want to actually set the neck and the pickups at an angle as well. The pickups then line up to the string angle. So if you do a flat route and your neck looks like this, your angle and your pickups aren't going to line up. So you want them to line up properly. So what you do is you angle everything that you're routing. So you can see here on the side, I've got a setup where after doing this for a number of years, I've got a number of different blocks set up. These are 3.5 for a Les Paul. I've got 2.5 on here that I used for my LS400 or LS5 a couple years ago. And essentially what you can do is if you don't have the right block set up, you can get a set of blocks, and I've got a set of wedges here, and you can move the blocks and the wedges to sort of change the angle. So within this, I've got a level here, and I can set up and see what the degree is. So I'll zero this. Now I know I'm essentially at 0. Pick this up and check the angle that I've got. And I want a 3.5 degree angle here for the neck. That's what I think is going to be the perfect space for the bridge. So we'll go ahead, reset up this template, and then I've got some top bearing router bits here that I'm going to put into my router, and it's going to follow the template on that angle. So a little bit more complicated to set up. You got to have the right tools and setup to do this. There's a lot of videos out there of guys how they do different jigs to do this. I usually like stick with my templates. That's what I'm used to. I've seen guys build jigs with pieces of wood that they angle up and down. Just depends on what you're comfortable with. This is what I like to do. I've got a nice clamping surface here on the front and the back on this custom table that I made that allows me just to clamp this down and be done. A lot of different ways to do this. See all the videos out there and do what you're comfortable with. Alright, so now we're all clamped down. What I did is I've got a brace going across the top with some lag bolts that hold this top frame down, and I put a clamp on the back. So now it doesn't move, there's no indentations. What I'll do is I'll get my router and route this out. So we'll get the vacuum cleaner. So next up in carving the top, I want to remove as much waste that I can before I actually take it to the grinder. So I've got a mallet and a chisel, and what I'll begin to do is take the chisel turned up and just get enough under to just pull off some of these chunks. It makes life much easier moving forward. And if you don't try and do too much, you can just take off the little bits that you need to. This goes much quicker and allows you to remove a bunch of material quickly. And with all the different holes I drilled, you won't be digging into the top where you've got divots. The trick is to just take a little bit and break it off and not go too deep to where you've drilled, so you're not pulling too much material up. Sanding this would take forever, but since I'm doing so much material move over here, it just makes my life easier. See, that took a lot, but since I've got my pilot holes drilled, I know I'm okay, but I'll make sure I don't go too far down. What I'll do is I'll go around and crack this so it doesn't take too much material. And when I come back, it doesn't do too much digging. This just makes the carving go so much smoother. The key with this is to not take too much material. Take little bits. Just go slow. On the upper horn here, I didn't drill as much, and I'm intentionally careful, and I think I'll do this with a spoke shave, is this is a really fine point, and I don't want to dig too much of this out. So I'm going to be very careful as I'm cutting here. I think I'm just going to do this by hand and not even take the grinder here, because this is just too much. It's too delicate. But for the stock removal on the back side here, I'm just going to continue to go at it slowly. And then what I'll do, I've got a gouge, and I'll be able to take this going back and just clean this up with my hand. It's got a nice U shape, and you can see just even as I do this by hand, just another way of removing stock slowly. I don't want to gouge this stuff out where I'm trying to take as much as I can. You just want to take little pieces. You go back and you can clean it up. The grinder and the sander will do it all, but since I've got my nice border, I know exactly where I'm going, and I can do this slowly. Look at that carve. That's pretty good. So we're pretty set here. I've chiseled off as much as I could, and you can see I've just got a little bit of pieces here left. I don't really need to go into any more gouge or chisel. We're going to take this to the carver next. We're going to do that in a separate video. So this is how I clean up the top before I take it to the power carver. You could keep going with a smaller gouge, and eventually you can get a file or a plane. A lot of guys will then take a plane and scrape it off so you get it nice and flat and carved out. But I haven't used a power grinder before. I found one from Harbor Freight. We're going to go ahead and try that with the 4-inch sanding disc and see how easy this is to carve and see what this looks like. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next vid.